that's not where we're going to stop. We're going to flatten this little baby down a little bit more. Then we're going to roll it into the frit tray. And to do that, I bring my frit tray up. I position the frit sort of at the mouth of the frit tray. And then I get the outer layer of glass on my mandrel soft and gooey. It's going to be hard to show the camera, but I want you to see out there in internet land without burning myself. And in case this looks scary, it is. The thing is to button down that glass right on the little frits right onto your surfaces. And I've got two surfaces, and they are basically 180 degrees opposite each other, and that's by design because I'm going to make two faces, one side A, side B. So melt in your frit. Give it an overall heating. Now I'm going to reach for clear, and I'm going to put a dollop. I'm going to heat up the clear, and I'm going to put a big dollop of it right on top of the frit that I just applied on one side, side A, and then I'm going to apply another dollop of clear, like a Hershey's Kiss, onto the other side. There are different ways to do this, and you could experiment and find your own way. I don't see why a person couldn't just put a whole ring of clear around and squish that. But because I want a rounded kind of coin shape, I want to create more of a lens effect. I don't want it bulging, so this is what I've come up with. I'm keeping that bead base with the Raku 108 and the special silvered green and blue glass frit, keeping it kind of warm. And now I'm managing to balance my gather of clear, and I'll bring it on like a Hershey's Kiss, and I'm below the flame, and I'm sort of letting it pool and puddle, pressing it into a lens. But it's very much like honey and molasses, and even more viscous than that in the sense that it kind of freezes quickly. So now I tear off in the flame, and that's what I have so far, and I'm ready to begin on the other side. We can experiment too and subject that other side to a little more of a reduction flame. See what that gives us when we case it, and then tuning it back to more oxygen when we're dealing with the clear, because we don't want too much of a propane environment for the clear. It'll get smoky. We want to keep the bead warm. Now I'm going to put another dollop of clear right over the other side where the frit was. And I really want these dollops of clear to be equal, so it's kind of a tricky business. I don't want it to run down the sides yet. I want it to sort of pool and puddle in a lens form. So I'm heating more like the top of the Hershey's Kiss than the base. I rotate, and I can see that my second application at least appears to me to have less bulk than my first, so I go back and add another little drop of the clear. And the clear I'm using, by the way, is not the Effetre. It's a Vetrafon clear, which I have found to be a superior form of clear to the Effetre. It doesn't have as much scum in it. It's just sort of better, works easier. So I like the Murano Vetrafon for clear as opposed to the Effetre clear. But because they're very similarly formulated, these are both 104 COE glasses. I understand that the chemist, the main glass chemist for the Vetrafon company, had worked in the Effetre or Moretti factory. So we're talking about similar compositions of glass. So now I'm kind of getting these little lenses melted in, but not too much. This is kind of going to look like a pill capsule bead before we do our smashing operation. You kind of want to get uniform globs. Because the smoother and more uniform and globular you start with, when you go into the press, the more nice and round the pressing will be. Keep this rotating so that nothing drifts off center. And there you have it, very beautiful 2-cell kind of pill-shaped or bone-shaped bead, each side being an extreme kind of magnified lens. And I have in my left hand an Occlusion lentil shaper, which has pre-drilled sort of dome molds for various profiles of lens. And I'm going to use the medium lens here as my point of pressing the clear in to get it to spread out. I'm going to fine-tune the flame, and I'm going to work now on one lens at a time, only one, keeping the other one relatively cool and stable so I don't have to worry about it. I heat up this second one, do a final heating, get it from both sides, and then bring it into position, and I push down. I try to get over it so I can see what I'm doing. I press down, press down, press down. Heat it briefly. We're going to do that for the other side, the same thing. Focus the heat on the glass portion, on the clear portion, because that's what I really want to spread. I want that lens to be the thing that smushes out and spreads. Pressing down, go back, you can kind of adjust it. I broke the bead release a little bit, so I'm in kind of a danger territory right now. But it hasn't failed in a major way, so I'm still okay. Enough to finish this bead and tuck it into bed in the kiln. Because I've used a cold tool, namely the lens, the Occlusion lentil shaper, I'm going to obviously heat the glass back in the flame. Very important, again, every time you use a cold tool, you want to reheat the glass that came in contact with the cold tool to remove any chill marks. So I'm heating the front of these lenses one at a time in a sort of a ratchet effect, checking it sideways. It's a handmade bead, so it's not going to be perfect, but it's good enough. Pretty, I think. And whatever frit combinations and designs you put in your lens initially before you capped it, that's what you're going to get. So there's no limit really to the possibilities here. I'm broadening my lens a little bit so you can keep playing with it, but I'm being really ginger, really careful, because I'm coming up against the mandrel on the sides. And I try not to press the top lens into the mandrel because I don't want it to leave an impression which will show through the lens, the impression of the mandrel. I want it to have kind of just a nice lens appearance with the thing that's showing through being the background frit and background color zone, not the mandrel itself. Now I do an overall heating, tune my oxygen down, go a little further out, make sure I've got all my chill marks off. If I want to do any final shaping, I could go in. I could reduce the profile of this, make it a little less thick, squeeze it in if I wanted to. And there's other tools to achieve this lens effect. Besides the lentil shaper like this, there are mashers. For instance, kind of a barbecue tong masher like this, where you would be squeezing like that. And that's a really good tool because it ensures that your lenses will be in parallel more or less with each other because of the action, the joint action, rather than pressing on one side or the other. And there's an even better tool, but the jaws are not quite wide enough for most of my starting points, so I usually save it for an end point. but it would be this parallel masher. And we'll see if we can fit this bead into the parallel masher. And yes, it does, and then we bring down, and it's kind of got a very powerful gripping action. So you want to be careful not to go too far. The rule of thumb is the wall thickness of the bead should not go smaller than the thickness or diameter of the mandrel. So break the bead into 3 sections from top to bottom, sideways. So part 1 would be wall 1, or side A. Then the midpoint is as thick as side A, and then the bottom, or side B, is as thick as the hole. So that's the rule. It should be 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, no less. Hope that was clear. But you shouldn't squeeze it down so much that the glass thickness is thinner than the diameter of the mandrel. Because I used those other presses, I want to go back and relieve the stress, the chill marks that are on the surface of that glass. You can tell, you look at it, and if it's shimmery, or if there's little divots and ripples, then it still has a chill mark. The divot and ripple represents the chill mark. And you take them out just by superheating briefly that area. And notice I'm really not rotating like this. I do, on occasion, give an overall heat, which is good because that pumps heat into the sides, and the whole bead needs to stay warm. But I don't want to do it too much because it would start to fuse the ends together, and you would lose maybe that nice sandwich effect that I've strived to have. So now we're at the point where we're basically done. Beautiful little sandwich lentil porthole style bead, using clear for the windows for each lens, using a lentil shaper, and having at its core a base of cobalt, and then the Raku 108, and then a frit, a Kugler silvered frit. Kugler is another glass company. And these glasses are slightly incompatible, so don't go overboard with the mixing, but you can get away with a little bit. Flame anneal, and into the kiln. So that concludes the porthole bead demonstration.